Tonight on Reporting Scotland, jailed for life. Finlay MacDonald is told he'll serve a minimum of 28 years behind bars for the brutal murder of his brother-in-law in Skye. MacDonald went on a shooting spree in the Northwest Highlands. His victims' families say their lives have been torn apart.
A callous coward whose actions have traumatised all those involved. There is no place in society for such a dangerous individual.
Also on tonight's programme, a service on the brink. A critical incident is declared across the NHS Grampian area. We'll have the latest.
I'll be live from Easter Road as Scotland take on Finland in a playoff for the Women's Euros.
Over 400 donations from all my friends and people that want to see me get well, and it's just totally humbling.
And we'll hear from the Stuntman, who's been offered a fundraising boost by Hollywood star Russell Crowe. Hello, I'm Laura Miller. Welcome to Friday's programme. In a quiet corner of the Highlands, famed for its natural beauty, Finlay MacDonald committed some of the most horrific crimes in local memory. The 41-year-old embarked on a stabbing and shooting spree that killed his brother-in-law, John McKinnon, and forever changed the lives of his wife, Rowena, local osteopath John Mackenzie, and his wife, Faye. Today, at the High Court in Edinburgh, a judge found MacDonald guilty of 1 count of murder and 3 of attempted murder, describing the attacks as brutal and mindlessly violent. MacDonald was sentenced to life in prison. Well, our reporter Stephen Gordon was in court for us. Stephen, and this has been really difficult for the families of those affected.
Yeah, Laura, it has. Throughout this trial, they've been in court listening to evidence that has been very difficult for them to hear. Today, some of them in the public gallery sobbed as Finlay MacDonald was found guilty. They then watched as the judge quickly moved to sentence him to at least 28 years in prison. They then moved outside the court, led by John McKinnon's sisters, and they stood side by side as they expressed the enormous toll that this has taken on them.
It should never be forgotten that John was defenceless at the time of his murder, when he was inhumanely shot 3 times in his own home while making breakfast for his children. Murdered by Finlay MacDonald, a callous coward whose actions have traumatised all those involved. There is no place in society for such a dangerous individual.
Finlay MacDonald's knife and gun attacks were all over in less than 2 hours that day. But what did happen more than 2 years on continues to have a big impact in the local area, as my colleague Ian McInnes reports.
It's normally a place of tranquility, but that peace was broken in August 2022 in a series of violent incidents across Skye and Lochalsh.
It was here in Tarskivig that Finlay MacDonald began his rampage, attacking his wife with a knife in the family home as their children watched on. MacDonald believed that his wife Rowena had been having an affair. He stabbed her multiple times and she lay bleeding in the driveway as he grabbed his shotgun and made his way out of the village.
From there he drove to Cheng, home to his sister Lynanne McKinnon.
She was frozen with fear as her brother walked into the house carrying a shotgun. MacDonald then fired at father of 6 John McKinnon multiple times, hitting him in the chest and in the abdomen before he left without saying a word. John McKinnon collapsed, but despite best efforts, he couldn't be saved.
Finlay MacDonald, though, wasn't finished there. He was spotted leaving the Slate Peninsula, headed towards the mainland.
By this time, 2 police cars were following MacDonald as he made his way here over the Skye Bridge. But they were told by the police control room in Dundee not to try and stop him, and that armed officers were on the way.
MacDonald then reached the village of Dorney and the home of retired osteopath John Mackenzie, who he claimed ruined his life by making a back injury worse.
MacDonald shot through the window of the house before he shot Mr Mackenzie's wife, Faye, in the face. John Mackenzie told the court how he lay on top of his wife in order to protect her before being shot in the back himself. He then tackled Finlay MacDonald, disarming him, and finally the violent spree was over.
In the immediate aftermath of that day, there was shock here. But that's now led to wider questions around gun ownership, rural policing and mental health, not just in the Skye and Lochailsh area, but in communities like this around the country. Ian McInnes, reporting Scotland.
Yeah, as Ian said there, the detail that's emerged during this trial has prompted questions. The jury heard, for example, that when the armed response team arrived in Dorney and John McKinnon was lying seriously injured, John Mackenzie was lying seriously injured, his wife, Faye, told them, "You're too late." Another detail to emerge was that the gun that Finlay MacDonald used that day was legally owned. In his mugshot, Finlay MacDonald bears the scars of the struggle that brought his violent rampage to an end. More than 2 years on, the wife he tried to kill and the sister he made a widow were among those who watched him face justice. The impact of his actions spelled out after the verdict.
The loss of John is immeasurable. The only thing that has kept us going was the hope that justice would prevail with a verdict of murder. Anything less would not have recognised the impact of the loss of our brother's life at the hands of Finlay MacDonald.
Every day of the trial, Finlay MacDonald sat staring straight ahead from the dock, showing no reaction to what was being said. The jury heard he was a man prone to angry outbursts and had long-standing anxiety about his health. In the months leading up to the attacks, he was signed off work, was visiting the GP frequently about physical complaints, and he was showing signs of serious depression. He was also nursing grievances against the osteopath he blamed for injuring his back, and his brother-in-law, who'd humiliated him in a fight years earlier. MacDonald's lawyer argued his client's responsibility for killing John McKinnon was diminished by the effect of mental disorders, chiefly PTSD and undiagnosed autism. But the jury rejected that defence, and the trial judge wasted no time in sentencing him.
Mr MacDonald, you carried out a series of brutal and mindlessly violent attacks with a knife and pump-action shotgun within a matter of hours. What began with a frenzied, persistent attack with a knife on your wife continued with you deliberately targeting those you bore long-standing grudges against.
The weapon he used to shoot both men was one of 6 shotguns Finlay MacDonald owned legally, having been granted a certificate by Police Scotland 15 months earlier. Firearms law is reserved to Westminster. In the immediate aftermath of the shootings, a committee of MPs recommended changes to firearms licensing. The government response to a subsequent Home Office consultation has yet to be published.
So I was the target of a violent coercive controller.
Since being held at gunpoint by a former partner, Rhiannon Bragg has campaigned for stronger safeguards, including reducing the 5-year renewal period.
I think it would be useful, really powerful, if the licensing process went from what it is currently, which is every 5 years, and was taken down to every 3 years. You know, so much can happen within a 5-year period.
This former head of firearms licensing for Police Scotland says lessons must be learned from every tragedy, but believes the current system works.
I think the system, if it's applied correctly, is robust, but the core part of it is that professional curiosity should be exercised. It's not just a tick in the box type process. It should be, if there is something there which makes the police uncomfortable, then they should go and look at it until it makes them not uncomfortable.
The circumstances of John McKinnon's death have been investigated by the police watchdog. So too the police response that saw officers told not to stop Finlay MacDonald's car as they followed him from Skye to Dorney. Their findings haven't been made public. Police Scotland wouldn't answer questions today, but did praise colleagues who tackled MacDonald before an armed response team arrived.
They acted under instruction to follow his vehicle and then put themselves at extreme risk by pursuing him into a house while shots were being fired.
A rare act of extreme violence that changed the lives of those affected. Tonight, the man responsible begins a life sentence. Stephen Godden reporting Scotland at the High Court in Edinburgh.
To other news now, and a union is warning that NHS Grampian's diversion of some ambulances away from Aberdeen Royal Infirmary should be a major warning light for Scotland's health service. A critical incident was declared last night by the Health Board. It says it's working with the Scottish Government and has a resilience plan in place. But there are concerns over the impact on patients and staff, as well as the timing of the incident near the start of the winter season. Louise Hosey reports.
Since last night, only ambulance patients with the most life-threatening conditions will be taken to Aberdeen Royal Infirmary. NHS Grampian says ARI is currently under sustained and continuing pressure, resulting in a decision to divert ambulances to other hospitals. Outside the infirmary today, some were concerned.
The ambulance paramedics are fantastic. They saved my life, and you know it's sad to see them put under so much pressure. And for the people who are ill in Aberdeen City and surrounding areas, they've got a long travel to go, and it might not make it. It's very sad.
Never mind the emergency ambulances, we can't get appointments.
My husband is now finally in hospital, but we had been to A&E ourselves and he was a long time waiting as well, and we could see all the ambulances lined up outside.
Speaking at a medical conference in Glasgow today, Scotland's Health Secretary said the Scottish Government is working with the Health Board to try to resolve the situation as quickly as possible.
The resilience plan should see this situation resolved in the coming days, and I will then be seeking to work, providing government support to see a longer term solution that means that we can see a better situation and a more sustainable situation going forward.
NHS Grampian says there are a number of factors which have led to this highly unusual situation. They include delayed discharges, so beds are not freed up, and the seasonal increase in illness.
Unions say the situation is alarming.
The fact that we are having a critical incident declared in November is extremely worrying to my members. You know, doctors in Grampian are very worried about the lack of beds in Aberdeen Royal Infirmary, and we really need to be hearing from the Health Board and indeed the Scottish Government what the solutions are.
In an update this evening, NHS Grampian said the ambulance divert had been stood down as the situation had improved slightly overnight, but that the board remained at critical incident level. It added that a small number of patients had been diverted away from the NHS Grampian area during the period it was in place. Louise Hosey, reporting Scotland, Aberdeen.
MPs at Westminster have voted in favour to legalise assisted dying in England and Wales. Similar legislation is still being prepared in Holyrood, but won't be voted on by MSPs until next year. Out of those Scottish MPs who voted, more voted against the proposals than in favour. SNP MPs decided not to take part. Well, watching the debate was our Westminster correspondent Rajdeep Sandhu. Rajdeep, this is a symbolic moment, but do you think it could have an impact on how MSPs vote on the issue here next year?
Yes, well, it was a really emotional debate. And like you said there, the SNP decided not to take part in it. They said it didn't apply to Scotland. However, there was criticism from a former SNP MP saying that they did vote on this in a previous instance in 2015, and that, of course, if England and Wales were to legalise assisted dying, it would have some impact on Scotland. Also abstaining was the Scottish Secretary Ian Murray. Now that's because he was away on government business, and we're not expecting him to make his view on this issue public. But Scottish Conservatives, Labour, Liberal Democrats all took part in this vote, and we know that 29 Scottish MPs voted against the proposals, 17 were in favour. Now that's quite interesting because of the vote we'll see in Holyrood next year on similar proposals. And we know that MSPs have been watching the debate very closely. We've heard tonight from Liam MacArthur, the Liberal Democrat MSP who's proposing the bill in Holyrood, saying that he's confident that MSPs would back his bill at stage one. Now, of course, this is not guaranteed to become law in Westminster. It still needs to go through a number of stages. But this is the first time any part of the UK has backed assisted dying.
OK, Rajdeep, thank you. The memorial service for Alex Salmond will take place in Edinburgh tomorrow at St Giles Cathedral. The former First Minister died suddenly in October after a heart attack. His niece, Christina Hendry, has been speaking about the impact of the death on the family. Well, our political correspondent Andrew Kerr is at St Giles for us tonight. Andrew, what has Miss Hendry been saying then?
Yes, Laura, Christina Henry has been sharing some memories of her late uncle, and she will be speaking at the service here tomorrow. Now, Alex Salmond's sudden death came as a tremendous shock to his family and his close friends. Miss Henry has been saying that this bereavement has been made even more difficult because it's been played out in the public eye through the media lens. 500 guests have been invited to St Giles tomorrow, and we're told the High Kirk is at capacity. Miss Henry has been saying this service is a chance for people to pay tribute to her uncle.
We know how loved Uncle Alec was across Scotland, and we want people to have the opportunity to pay their respects. It's obviously unfortunate that there's limited capacity. I think that's just the nature of things. I think if it had been possible, we would have just had it open, invited everybody, because there are so many people who want to pay their respects. But it is really quite special, and it's special to see people from across the political spectrum.
And Andrew, who's expected to attend the service then?
Yes, that's right. Well, the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister are expected to attend. One person who will not be here is the former First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, who was, of course, Alex Salmond's protégé. She will instead go to the funeral of the comedian Janie Godley in Glasgow tomorrow. Now, Kenny McCaskill, the former Scottish Justice Secretary and childhood friend of Alex Salmond, will pay tribute to him during the service, and the Conservative MP, Sir David Davis, will give a Bible reading. He was a close friend of Mr Salmond from their Westminster days. There will be musical performances too from the Proclaimers, Dougie MacLean and Sheena Wellington. And Laura, in a sense, this memorial service provides the final chapter in Mr Salmond's life and his political career.
OK, Andrew in Edinburgh, thank you. And you can watch Alex Salmond's memorial service live from St Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh tomorrow on the BBC News website and on BBC iPlayer from 10:30 in the morning. Well, let's just get the sport now then from Sheila McLaren, who is out and about for us at Easter Road tonight, and a big night ahead for Scotland's women.
Yes, Laura, it certainly is. It's a huge night for Scotland. It's been 5 years since the women's team last played at a major tournament. Now they're just 2 games away from next year's European Championships in Switzerland. Pedro Martinez Losa's side topped the group, and after that they swept aside Hungary in the first playoff. Now just Finland stand in their way. And after missing out on the last Euros and the World Cup, Scotland are determined they won't let this one pass them by.
It's been hard to even want to go and watch and support because you just sort of feel like, you know, we wanted to be there and we should have been there, and we felt like we had a strong enough squad to be there. So it was frustrating, and it definitely it adds some fuel to our fire, sort of thing, to try and help us get there and not relive these summers where we're, you know, sort of sat at home and not competing in these tournaments.
It's not even thinking about the hurt for me, it's thinking about the feeling of qualifying, like the feeling I felt in Albania, the feeling when we qualified for the Euros last time. Like, if I could bottle that moment up and, you know, just share it with everybody in the room, then I'm sure it would be the best thing in the world. So for me, I think just thinking of the positive, like less thinking about the heart and more thinking about what it actually feels like.
I'm joined now by Scotland's record goal scorer, Julie Fleeting. Julie, thanks so much for joining us. The players there were talking about missing out on the previous 2 tournaments. How much can that experience help them tonight?
Yeah, I think it definitely will. I think these big games, you need to draw on previous experiences. The fact that they did lose out before, there are players in the squad who have also been to major tournaments, so they know how that feels, they know how the heartache feels of not making tournaments, and hopefully they'll be spurring on the younger players in the dressing room so that they know just how important this game is.
Scotland are on a great run, 7 wins in a row, but how tough will this Finland side be tonight?
Yeah, Finland and Scotland are very similar in terms of their rankings, and it's very difficult to separate the sides, certainly in previous fixtures. So I think we're in for a really close game tonight. Hopefully the home crowd will get behind Scotland and just give them that extra incentive. And yeah, I mean, it's the first game, there's still an away leg to go. We want to make sure that we get a positive result tonight that we can take over to Finland.
And just briefly, how much would it mean to get this team full of players playing at the top level back to a major tournament?
I think when you look at the quality that we've got on the pitch tonight and also on the bench, they're players who need to be playing at the highest level. We should be competing at major tournaments. We have the ability to do that, we've got the squad to do that. And yeah, we'll be absolutely praying that we get the right result, but we deserve the right result because, as you say, they've done tremendously well up to this point.
Julie, thanks so much for joining us this evening and enjoy the game. OK, we have some other news now, and Rangers say they're in dialogue with UEFA about what they call deeply concerning incidents in Nice last night, including alleged heavy-handed policing which jeopardised their supporters' safety. On the pitch though, Philippe Clement says his side delivered a performance close to perfection in their 4-1 win. The Ibrox club's biggest away win in European competition since 2007 has fuelled hopes of qualifying for the last 16. Well, Kenny Crawford has more.
In Europe is really really good, of course, but this is a away game. Difficult.
One back late on, but it didn't take the shine off a result that puts Rangers in the automatic qualifying spots for the last 16. There's still plenty of water to go under the bridge though, and the team know it.
We have a lot of big opponents coming ahead of us, like three big opponents. But we want that, of course. You want to be the first 8. We want to qualify.
That's all the sport for me here at Easter Road. It's Scotland against Finland in the playoff for the Women's Euros, and the coverage starts on the BBC Scotland channel at 7:20.
Good stuff. Thank you, Sheila. Easter Road. Now, everyone likes to think in times of trouble your friends will come to your aid, and so it was for actor and stuntman Charlie Allen from the Borders when he injured his leg. It just so happens his friend is Russell Crowe, whom he worked with on the original Gladiator film. And he has donated £5,000 to help Charlie pay for an operation. Our arts correspondent Polly McLean takes up the story.
Actor Russell Crowe and stuntman Charlie Allen have been friends for more than 2 decades. So when Charlie founded this medieval village near Denny, Russell was one of the first to lend his support.
Well, it's very impressive, isn't it? You know, and you can see photographs and you can talk about it and stuff, but it's nothing like actually being here. You know, I met Charlie obviously on the set of Gladiator. The first time I ever saw him, you know, he's standing there in full regalia as the leader of the barbarians with a severed head in his hand, yelling stuff at me. You know, so I thought to myself, I should go and meet that bloke. And we've had a friendship ever since.
But having built his dream with a little help from his friends, Charlie faced a new challenge.
I was actually at home working on my gym, building a platform, and I stepped off the platform. And my leg buckled underneath me at a really dodgy angle and made some really heavy crunching noises when I landed.
That developed into a thrombosis, which according to Charlie required a treatment unavailable in the UK. Friends launched a crowdfunder to pay for a private operation in America. Russell Crowe was just one of those who donated and encouraged others. And within weeks, they'd raised £25,000.
Everybody, whether I know you or not, they've donated and helped. And I've had a few emails from people saying I only had a little amount. And that's not what counts. It's the thought that counts. And collectively, all together, you've shown me a lot of love, and I can't thank you guys enough. It's a life changer.
Charlie hopes to have the operation in the next few weeks and be back on his feet in the new year. Polly McLean, reporting Scotland.
It's a bit of early Christmas spirit for you. Now to one final bit of news for this evening. The hearse carrying the coffin of the late comedian Janie Godley travelled through Edinburgh today on what her daughter calls her final tour ahead of her funeral tomorrow in Glasgow. Ashley Story says it's travelling through her beloved festival home. Godley died earlier this month from cancer at the age of 63. OK, let's get the weather now with Gillian. It's a bit all over the place, isn't it?
Yes, it's been much milder again today, Laura, after being very cold yesterday. And it's staying mild over the weekend, but quite a lot of cloud, brisk winds and some rain at times as well. We certainly weren't spoilt for sunshine today, were we? We had lots of cloud blanketing the country, quite brisk winds in places as well, and just a few brighter breaks, and most of them in the northeast. But what it has been is much milder than yesterday. These are the temperatures yesterday and today, and well, you can see what a contrast. 14 degrees difference at Kinlochew in the Northwest Highlands, and it's because we're bringing in that milder air off the Atlantic, but with low pressure close by, weather fronts bringing outbreaks of rain as well, and we'll continue to see some rain working its way northeastwards across the country tonight, and then most places becoming dry by morning. A few clear breaks. Temperature-wise, it's staying on the mild side, holding up in double digits for many of us, but still brisk winds, especially for the west coast and for the Northern Isles. Into tomorrow then, quite a lot of cloud once again, and we'll see some showery outbreaks of rain trundling their way northeastwards, especially for the Western Isles, the Northwest Highlands, Orkney. At this stage, around about 3 o'clock, Shetland dry. A few brighter breaks, especially towards the Moray coast, over northern Aberdeenshire, and a few for Fife, the Lothians and the Borders, and temperatures reaching 13 Celsius, so well up on where we'd expect for the time of year. But that cloud thick enough to produce some patchy rain over the southern uplands, over the hills of Argyll and the Northwest Highlands, and still brisk southerly winds to contend with along the west coast in particular. Tomorrow evening we hang on to lots of cloud. We'll see another showery band of rain moving through, followed by some clearer skies. And then as we head into Sunday, we start with rain in the southeast. That will clear away and skies brighten for a time, but we'll continue to see some bands of showers working their way in from the northwest, and quite heavy showers for northwest Scotland later in the day. They're linked to this little feature, which once it goes through opens the floodgates to some much colder air as we start next week. So for Monday, early rain clearing southeast Scotland, then it's largely dry, just the odd wintry shower in the north, but cold northerly winds and temperatures well down on where they have been. Laura.
Thank you, Gillian. Now tonight's main news again. Jailed for life, Finlay MacDonald is told he'll serve a minimum of 28 years behind bars for the brutal murder of his brother-in-law in Skye. And that is Reporting Scotland. Ben Phillip will have your late news about 10:30 tonight. Until then, from everyone in the team, enjoy your evening. Good night.